Did Donald Trump just sell out? On today's episode of America Unfiltered with James Pascalides, we'll talk about Donald Trump dropping multiple bombs on Iran over the weekend. All that and much more coming up on today's episode of America Unfiltered with James Pascalides, starting now.
The moment is here. This is our moment.
America, we are back, baby. Welcome to another episode of America Unfiltered. Let's dive right into everything today. Donald Trump dropped over 6 bunker buster bombs on Fordo in Iran. This is something that I said would happen from day one. The day Israel decided to missile strike Iran, I knew that it wasn't about trying to get rid of their nuclear facility. It was about regime change. It was about getting the United States involved because Israel had no way to take out Iran's nuclear facility. So if they actually wanted it to be taken out in the first place, they would have asked us to do it. They wouldn't have just jumped in and did it themselves. But they got what they wanted. The United States got involved. We bombed Fordo, and now the United States is involved. This has now led to counter-retaliations by Iran as well. They launched 6 strikes today, all 6 missing due to the United States' superior technology. But nonetheless, we are now in this war. We are now heavily involved because of Israel. I want to talk about some of the things happening in our government, and I want to talk about the entire history of the Middle East conflicts and how the United States has been involved through each one and how Israel has been involved. I want to talk about how there's people in our government right now, specifically Democrats, who are calling what Trump did unconstitutional. I do not agree with what Trump did. I don't agree with the neocons who are pushing for the regime change and pushing for the consistent wars in the Middle East that we see year in and year out. But I don't agree with Democrats calling it unconstitutional. Every president has used their unitary executive authority to do strikes like this. Every president has used their authority to push forward their agenda, what they got elected on. And this is something that Democrats are calling unconstitutional because it's Donald Trump. Well, let me play this video for you guys real quick.
Today I authorized 2 operations in Iraq. Targeted airstrikes to protect our American personnel. Last night, on my orders, America's armed forces began strikes against ISIL targets in Syria. Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. Today, I authorized the armed forces of the United States to begin a limited military action in Libya.
Because a nuclear Iran is a threat to our national security. They can take the diplomatic route, or they will have to face a United States president, me, who said we're not going to take any options off the table.
I love when liberals make really hypocritical statements. They say that everything Trump does is bad and it's illegal, but when Obama does it, it's okay. It's just BS. It's not how it works. Obama deported over 5 million people, over 2.5 million without court cases, but that wasn't a problem for liberals. Obama did more air and drone strikes than most presidents could ever dream of. But no, not a huge problem. And again, I do have a problem with what Donald Trump is doing, but the fact that liberals didn't have a problem calling out Obama, but they have no problem calling out Trump every single day, it just shows you the hypocrisy. It just shows you the delusion. It shows you all the nut jobs we have working in our government and who Democrats have elected in office. I do want to get into some more things that are coming from inside the government on this. JD Vance released this video as well. He was talking about the strikes, and he was talking about the conflicts in the Middle East.
I certainly empathize with Americans who are exhausted after 25 years of foreign entanglements in the Middle East. I understand the concern, but the difference is that back then we had dumb presidents, and now we have a president who actually knows how to accomplish America's national security objectives. So this is not going to be some long, drawn-out thing. We've got in, we've done the job of setting their nuclear program back. We're going to now work to permanently dismantle that nuclear program over the coming years, and that is what the president has set out to do. Simple principle. Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. That has animated American policy over the past 130 days. It's going to continue to be a driving force of our policy in the Middle East for the next 3.5 years.
You heard it here first, folks. I've been saying for weeks now that this is the United States getting involved in this war, that we are now involved. And he started the video saying we got in and out, but then he proceeds to say in the video that this will be the policy over the next 3.5 years, that over the next few years that we will dismantle their nuclear program. How do we dismantle their nuclear program over the next few years without being involved? We don't. We are fully involved in this Middle Eastern conflict. Our ally Israel got us involved in this conflict. This is something that the United States probably would have done on their own over time, taking out Iran's nuclear program. I think the majority of Americans, including me, agree Iran should not have a nuclear device, and Iran having a nuclear device is not good for the United States. But Israel's way of handling it was not the correct way of doing it. It put the United States in a bad position where now we are defending against retaliatory attacks from Iran. We're able to defend the attacks because, like I've said before, our military investments have paid off very heavily. We do have extreme military fighting and defense capabilities. So Iran's 6 missiles that they shot at the United States air bases all were deflected or missed. This is no surprise. But it keeps drawing even further. Now you have Donald Trump calling out people like Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie is a Republican governor. He is someone who is extremely smart. He does speak out against some Donald Trump policies. He's not a Trump absolutist. He's an America First patriot. He's somebody who thinks America should be put first in every way, same as Marjorie Taylor Greene, same as people like me. I think America should be first by our American government. The fact that our government is funding wars overseas when we have homeless veterans, when we are fighting obesity crises on our homeland is terrible to me. We have enough problems domestically that we do not need to be funding everyone else's problems around the entire world. It was the same reason I supported Doge and cutting USAID and cutting all those things. Why are we now supporting Israel and their airspace? Why are we now taking out Iran? Why are we now supporting this regime change? And why are we now involved in all these conflicts around the world all the time? It's been almost 30 years of my life that I have seen nonstop Middle Eastern conflicts and the United States being involved in them. I'm very tired of seeing it. I want the United States to put the United States first for once. Candace Owens even called this out. Candace Owens said that if we were able to raise the $100 million for Donald Trump in his second term, the same way he was able to self-fund his first term, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Trump took $100 million from Adelson, who is a Israeli lobbyist in the United States, and now we're in a war defending Israel. I'm not saying that's 100% the reason why, but we all know that lobbyists influence politicians, and possibly Trump sold out. Trump could have sold out and owed Israel a favor. They gave him $100 million to help him get elected. That is no small deed. That is something that they probably do expect a favor back. And whether that's legal or not, every president does it, every politician does it, and until they make lobbying illegal, that's going to be the reality of the way politics works. We're going to have nonstop corruption in our politics as long as lobbying is legal, because lobbying is just another word for legal corruption. I want to show the video real quick of what Team Trump released on TikTok, and then right after, I want to get into the full history of the Middle East, of Israel, and of everything that led to this conflict and what I think will happen over the next few weeks. With the ceasefire being announced by Donald Trump today that Iran and Israel will have a ceasefire in 24 hours, I think over the next few weeks we will see the United States start to implement more strategies to destabilize Iran's nuclear program and do a full-on regime change in Iran. Like I've been saying, it is not as much about the nukes as it is about regime change. That is the main goal of Israel and the main goal of the United States in this entire conflict. That was the entire reason they decided to bomb Iran in the first place. I do want to go into our history of the Middle East and Israel. This is going to take a while, so strap in. I do think this is all pretty interesting. If you don't know a lot about the Middle East, or you don't know a lot about the conflicts there, or Israel's involvement, or the United States involvement, or how we got to this place where we are now bombing Iran and in a full-scale conflict with Iran, or soon to be full-scale conflict with Iran, this is something that might be interesting to you. So in 1948, Israel declares independence. The land they took had been under British control since the end of World War I. When the Ottoman Empire collapsed, Britain was given the mandate of Palestine by the League of Nations in 1920. It covered the territory that is now called Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, and Jordan. It was colonial administration. Britain controlled immigration, land policy, governance. They were also stuck managing violent uprisings, tensions between Arabs, Jews, increasing pressure from both sides. The Zionist movement had been around long before that. Jews had been moving into the area since the late 1800s, especially after programs in Eastern Europe and anti-Semitic laws in places like Russia and Poland. They bought land legally, often from absentee landowners, and built infrastructure, roads, farms, cities, schools. By the time of World War II, there were hundreds of thousands of Jews in Palestine. There were entire institutions and defense groups, underground militias, labor unions, and political parties were already in place. The Holocaust happened, 6 million Jews were tragically murdered, hundreds of thousands were left stateless, displaced person camps across Europe. Western nations did not want to take them in. Britain limited Jewish immigration to Palestine under the 1939 White Paper, trying to keep peace with the Arab population. Jewish paramilitary groups then started bombing British offices, trains, and hotels, like the King David Hotel bombing in 1946. They wanted to take the British out of their land. By 1947, Britain is done. They hand the issue over to the United Nations, which votes the partition of the land, create a Jewish state and an Arab state. Side by side, the Jews accept it, the Arab state rejects it. Civil war immediately breaks out between the Jews, the Arabs, and Palestine. When the British finally withdraws in May of 1948, Israel declared their independence. Right after that, the armies from Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Iraq all invade. Not metaphorically, they literally invaded. Their tanks rolled in, their planes bombed cities. The Arab League's goal was to prevent the establishment of Israel and to support the Arab population. Jordan's Arab Legion captured East Jerusalem. Egypt took control of Gaza in a full military invasion, but the Israeli forces, made up of former underground fighters and refugees, held their ground. In some cases, they even pushed back and took more land than what was allocated to them in the original UN plan. The war dragged on for about a year, and it ended in about 1949 with armistice agreements. Israel survives, it gained territory, over 700,000 Palestinians flee or are expelled, and this becomes the root of the refugee crisis that still exists with Palestine. While this is happening, and the US is calling for restraint and pretending to be neutral, American Jewish organizations and mainly mafia members like Meyer Langsy, Bugsy Siegel are funding arms shipments to Israel. They use shell companies, fake paperwork, ship everything out from rifles, machine guns, aircraft parts, mostly from leftover US World War II stockpiles. Meyer Langsy was a protected United States informant. He helped the United States government in a lot of ways. He was a Jewish-American mafia member who was recognized by La Cosa Nostra, the Italian mafia, as well. So this is a very powerful person in the United States who is able to help Israel in this time. Israel used the ceasefire in 1948 to reorganize their forces. They recruited more fighters, brought in more weapons, and by the end of the year and the end of the war, Israel's military isn't just this like ragtag military group. They're an organized national army. What started as a desperate defense force becomes one of the most equipped and battle-tested militaries in that entire region. So when people talk about 1948 like it was just some simple declaration of independence, they're missing a lot. It wasn't just about raising a flag, it was a war. It was foreign powers pulling strings, it was illegal arms deals, it was a refugee crisis, and it was the beginning of everything that came after. In 1956, the Suez Crisis breaks out. Egypt's president at the time announced he's nationalizing the Suez Canal. The canal wasn't just some waterway, it was a critical trade route. It connected Europe to Asia, and Britain and France had relied on it for shipping oil from the Middle East. So when Nasser takes control, Britain and France go into panic mode. They want it back, but they can't just roll in and take it. The US is now the top global power in the world after World War II. Eisenhower's administration doesn't want another colonial-style war erupting, especially one that could drag in the Soviets, so Britain and France come up with a workaround. They strike a secret deal with Israel, what's known now as the Protocol of Sèvres. The plan is Israel invades Egypt from the east, moves across the Sinai Peninsula, marches towards the canal, then Britain and France step in pretending to be neutral peacekeepers, demanding both sides withdraw. Egypt refuses, so Britain and France intervene militarily and bomb Egyptian targets under the cover of restoring order. It's coordinated, it's dishonest, and it almost always works. Israel invades, citing Egyptian aggression, and blockades off Israeli shipping as justification. Within days, they're closing in on the canal. British and French forces follow, launching airstrikes and beginning their intervention. But the whole operation unraveled pretty fast. Eisenhower was mad, the U.S. wasn't informed, and he's trying to keep the Arab world from flipping to the Soviets during the Cold War. The invasion was reckless, colonial, and dangerous, so the U.S. applied maximum pressure, diplomatic, economic, and financial. Eisenhower threatened to tank the British pound, and he wasn't bluffing. Under that pressure, Britain, France, and Israel are forced to withdraw. It was a total embarrassment for the Europeans and a wake-up call for Israel. At this point, Israel realizes something. Their entire existence is dependent on foreign support and foreign restraint as well. They don't want to be caught in that position again. That's when the mindset inside Israel's leadership starts to shift. David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister and basically the godfather of modern Israel, starts thinking long term. He becomes fixated on Israel having its own nuclear deterrent. The US, the Soviets, Britain, and now France all have nuclear weapons. Israel has conventional forces, but they're surrounded by hostile countries. They see the nukes as insurance, a way to guarantee that no matter how outnumbered they are, no one will risk annihilation by launching a full-scale war. So by the late 50s, Israel starts laying the groundwork. Quietly, they strike deals with France, who at the time still felt burned by the US over Suez, and sees value in backing Israel. France agrees to help Israel build a nuclear reactor under the table. That's the Dimona project. It's in the Negev desert, and officially it's for research. Everyone involved knew the real goal. It's about building the infrastructure to develop nuclear weapons and their capabilities. Israeli scientists are sent to France for training. French engineers help design and construct the facility. Shipments of uranium and heavy water start to quietly move. By the time the 1960s roll around, Israel has a full-blown covert nuclear program in motion. They don't announce it, they don't test anything, but they're moving pretty fast and keeping it completely hidden from the international community, especially the United States. That's the beginning of what becomes Israel's policy of nuclear ambiguity. Never admitting they have nukes, never denying it either. So when people talk about the Suez Crisis like it was just about a canal, they're missing the bigger picture as well. It's the moment where Israel realized they can't count on Europe. It's the moment they realize the United States will throw its weight around when it wants to, and it's the moment they started to act like a serious military power that needs to have their own insurance policies, because they know nobody's going to come to save them every single time. Eisenhower left office in '61, but before he does, he warned JFK that Israel is building a nuclear weapon. This wasn't speculation. United States intelligence had already picked up the signs, satellite images, informants had reported it, and reports came from France and other allies. The Dimona facility in the desert isn't just a research reactor, it's a full-blown nuclear weapons project. Eisenhower didn't do much about it in his last days, but he flags it for Kennedy as a serious threat to regional stability. So JFK picks it up immediately. He's young, he's aggressive, and he doesn't want another nuclear power springing up in the Middle East. He starts pressuring Israel hard. He wants full transparency. He tells the Israeli government they need to submit to United States inspections. He wants access to Dimona, not just to tour it, but to examine everything, reactor output, construction records, and the real purpose of the nuclear site. Israel resisted. They stalled. They gave United States officials controlled tours. Rooms were sealed off. False walls are built to hide certain areas. Inspectors are told the facility is for peaceful energy research only. So the United States was directly lied to. Repeatedly behind the scenes, they're panicking. They know Kennedy is not bluffing. They know that the United States support, financial aid, and the diplomatic protection of the UN, the legitimacy Israel has on the world stage, could be pulled by Kennedy if he followed through on his threat. In 1963, Kennedy sent a direct letter to Ben-Gurion. It's not vague. It says in plain language, allow serious inspections or the U.S. will reevaluate its entire relationship with Israel. That means aid could be cut, diplomatic support could disappear, the pressure is real, and literally the very next day, Ben-Gurion resigns. No official explanation. He claims he never even saw or read the letter. We all know that's false. But no scandal, no health issues. The man who led Israel through its founding, through 2 wars, through the nuclear deal with France, walked away out of nowhere. Again, not a coincidence. That letter was the last straw. Ben-Gurion knew where things were headed, and the guy who replaced him, Levi Eshkol, steps in the exact same pressure campaign. JFK keeps it going. He wants 2 full inspections a year at Dimona. He doesn't trust the Israeli explanations. He sees through the fake tours. He's not buying the research excuse. He wants proof they're not developing nuclear weapons. But before any of that happens, November 22nd, 1963, JFK is assassinated in Dallas, and that's where everything really flips. Lyndon B. Johnson takes office, and United States policy towards Israel changes almost overnight. Under Johnson, military aid to Israel skyrockets. It triples within a few years, and we're not talking about grain shipments or water infrastructure anymore. We're talking tanks, fighter jets, missiles, intel sharing, joint weapons development. America officially becomes Israel's primary arms supplier. And what's interesting is right after JFK dies, the nuclear pressure disappears. Johnson doesn't pursue the Dimona inspections. The U.S. stops demanding transparency. Israel keeps the nuke program quiet, keeps up the lies about research, and keeps building. And from that point forward, the alliance is locked in. Israel becomes the single largest recipient of U.S. foreign aid in U.S. history. Military coordination then increases year after year. The whole issue of the bomb, it's off the table. It's never seriously brought up again. They just act like it's not there. They act like it wasn't an issue at all. So that stretch from Eisenhower to Kennedy to Johnson, that's the pivot point. One president tries to stop Israel from going nuclear. The next one lets it happen and starts writing checks. And from that moment on, United States policy isn't neutral, isn't trying to balance the region. It becomes openly, unquestionably pro-Israel. In 1967, Israel launches a surprise preemptive strike on Egypt and Syria. That kicks off what now is called the 6-Day War. They hit Egyptian airfields first, wipe out their air force on the ground before a single Egyptian plane even got in the air. Then they move on Syria. Jordan jumps in too, and within 6 days, Israel takes the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and the Golan Heights. Their territory more than triples. It's a complete military blowout. Israel goes from being surrounded to being dominant overnight. Now here's where it gets even darker. During that war, the United States Navy has a ship in the region. We've talked about this before, but we'll dive into it a little more now. An intelligence gathering vessel called the USS Liberty. It's a technical research ship, basically a floating surveillance platform. It's clearly marked, big American flags flying, massive hull number painted on the side, broadcasting its identity constantly over the radio. The ship is in international waters northeast of the Sinai Peninsula, listening to military comms during the war. June 8th, 1967, Israel attacks the USS Liberty. First, Israeli fighter jets strafe the ship with rockets and cannon fire. Then they jam Liberty's communication frequencies so it cannot call for help. They then send in torpedo boats. One of the torpedoes punched a 40-foot hole in the side of the ship. 34 Americans are killed, 171 wounded. It's one of the worst attacks on a U.S. Navy ship by an ally in American history. And Israel's official story? It was all a mistake. They say they thought it was an Egyptian ship, even though it was flying the United States flag, broadcasting United States communications, and had United States ship markers all over the side of it. They claim they thought it was an Egyptian ship. It looked nothing like an Egyptian ship. It repeatedly identified itself over open channels as an American ship. Survivors of this attack often claim that it was deliberate. They say that the plane circled first, clearly saw the flag, and then decided to open fire only after seeing it was an American ship. They say the jamming of U.S. distress frequencies wasn't an accident. That was a surgical plan. It was meant to prevent the ship from getting the word out that we were being attacked by our own allies. The most disturbing theory, and the one many Liberty crew members believe, is that Israel attacked the ship on purpose to prevent the United States from hearing their battlefield communications in real time. The Liberty was listening in, and Israel didn't want the U.S. picking up everything they were doing, including potential war crimes, plans to expand territory, or even a coming move against Syria that had not been authorized by the United States. So what does the United States government do? Do they respond to an unprovoked attack that kills 34 Americans and cripples a U.S. Navy ship? No, they covered it up. Lyndon Johnson orders the incident to be buried. There's no military retaliation, no sanctions. The survivors are threatened with court material if they talk. So people who are on the ship, military service members, are threatened with court material if they are to speak about what actually happened to them. The entire crew is silenced for decades. Congress never holds a proper investigation, and it's just fully swept under the rug. Why? Because by that point, the U.S.-Israel relationship has been locked in. Johnson's administration is fully pro-Israel. We're shipping them jets, tanks, billions in aid, and nobody in Washington wants to risk blowing up that alliance, even if it means selling out dead Americans. So the Liberty becomes one of those don't ask, don't touch stories in United States history. It's barely mentioned in schools. I didn't learn about it until I did my own research. The media treats it like a footnote. Politicians run from it. And even today, bringing it up gets you labeled anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, or worse. I guarantee I'm going to get some heat for posting this video today, even though everything in here is 100% backed up by facts, and anyone can look up any of this information at any time. The truth is simple. Israel knowingly attacked a U.S. Navy ship. Americans died and our government let it slide. They protected Israel instead of their own troops, and they set a precedent that's still playing out today, where loyalty to a foreign ally takes priority over justice for American lives. The USS Liberty should have been a national scandal. It should have triggered hearings, resignations, consequences, and possibly even a war with what we called our own ally. But instead it was buried, and to this day, nobody talks about it, and even mainstream conservatives say it is not true, Charlie Kirk specifically. Fast forward to 1973, Egypt and Syria are still humiliated by the Six-Day War in 67. They lost territory, they lost prestige, and they want payback. So they coordinate, and on October 6, 1973, Yom Kippur, the holiest day in Judaism, Egypt and Syria decide to launch a surprise attack on Israel. Egyptian forces cross the Suez Canal in the Sinai. Syrian forces push into the Golan Heights. Israel's forces were overstretched, the front lines were crumbling, and the panic started to set in. So what did Israel start to do? They start signaling nuclear readiness. Quietly but deliberately, they moved Jericho missiles out of storage. They load nuclear-capable aircraft. They made sure the United States knows exactly what's on the table if things don't turn around. This isn't speculation either. U.S. intelligence picks this up immediately. It's confirmed years later. The message to Washington is clear. Help us now or this war will go nuclear. At first, the United States hesitated. Nixon and Kissinger are caught in the middle of the Cold War chessboard. They don't want to provoke the Soviets who are backing Egypt and Syria, but the nuclear signal spooks them, and they realize if Israel actually drops a nuke, it could trigger World War III. So the U.S. launches Operation Nickelgrass, a massive military airlift. Cargo planes start flying nonstop, delivering tanks, artillery, ammunition, spare parts, and advanced weaponry into Israeli hands. Over 22,000 tons of equipment just floods the region. That's what turns the tide. Israel regains its footing. They push Egyptian forces back across the canal and encircle them. Ariel Sharon leads a counteroffensive that traps Egypt's Third Army. In the north, Israel drives Syrian forces out the Golan and pushes within striking distance of Damascus. The Soviets respond by putting their nuclear forces on alert. The U.S. does the same. The whole world is on the edge at this point. Eventually, the war ends with another ceasefire, but the outcome isn't just military. It's political. The bond between the U.S. and Israel goes from friendly to unbreakable at this point. After this war, the U.S. is no longer just a diplomatic ally to Israel. It's a full military partner. Joint training, arms deals, intelligence sharing. From this point forward, Israel became a cornerstone of the U.S. Middle East policy. And then something else in the United States changed too. Inside the United States, especially in American Jewish politics, a lot of Jews in America, especially in New York, had come out of the left. They were Marxists, intellectuals, people who were anti-war, anti-imperialism, pro-labor. But during the Yom Kippur War, They watch the Soviet Union back Egypt and Syria. They realize if the USSR wins, Israel might not survive, and it really flips everything. Suddenly, they're pro-military, they're pro-United States power, they want to defend Israel at all costs, and that's when the modern neoconservative is born. A bunch of ex-leftists turn into hardcore Cold Warriors and staunch pro-Israel hawks. They go from writing The Dissent to backing Reagan and pushing foreign interventions. Then in 1976, another shift, the Likud Party comes to power in Israel. That's the Israeli right, the hard right. Menachem becomes prime minister. Their whole doctrine is different. It's not about just defending Israel's borders anymore. It's about breaking up the Arab world into fragmented, unstable pieces. They see Arab states as weak, not because they're small, but because they're divided internally. Sunni, Shia, Druze, Christians, Kurds, tribal splits. That becomes the strategy. Exploit those divisions. A strategy written in 1982 by Odin Yinnel lays it out clearly. Israel's long-term security depends on breaking up large, unified Arab states into small, weaker entities. Then in 1978, Israel signs a peace treaty with Egypt. Jimmy Carter brokered it. Israel returns to the Sinai Peninsula in exchange for recognition. Israel becomes the first Arab country to officially recognize Israel. On paper, that's a win for peace, but beneath the surface, the region's dynamics start shifting again. Egypt's leader, under Sadat, is now seen as a traitor by many in the Arab world. It breaks Arab unity, and it gives Israel the space to focus elsewhere. The same year, 1978, Israel invades southern Lebanon. The official reason is to root out Palestinian militants, but it's the start of a long and messy involvement with Lebanon. In and out, over and over, it becomes a permanent front in the north. Then 1979, a massive game changer. Iran, the Shah, who had been a U.S. puppet for decades, is overthrown in a popular uprising. The Ayatollah takes power. Iran goes from being a secular dictatorship to an Islamic theocracy almost overnight. They don't just want to run their country, they want regional influence. They start exploiting their ideology, they start funding Shia militias. In Lebanon, that means backing groups that will eventually form Hezbollah. Iran uses them to bleed Israel in the north through guerrilla warfare, rocket attacks, and asymmetric warfare. It's a new phase of conflict, one that's still going on today. So between 73 and 79, the entire map pretty much shifted. Israel goes from survival mode to expansion, from being one of many regional players to being the centerpiece of U.S. foreign policy. American Jewish politics shifts hard to the right, neoconservatives rise, and the Cold War lines U.S. with Israel, Soviets with the Arabs, and lines start to blur as Iran becomes a wild card. That's the foundation of everything that's happening in the next 4 decades. In 1981, Iraq is under Saddam Hussein. He's building a nuclear reactor near Baghdad. It's supposedly for research, but everyone knows what it actually is. Israel sees this as an existential threat. They don't wait for the international community. They don't issue warnings. They just go ahead and they bomb it. It was called Operation Opera. Israeli F-16s flew across Jordanian and Saudi airspace undetected, dropped precision bombs, and destroyed the reactor before it went online. It's one of the boldest preemptive strikes in modern military history. Iraq was furious. The UN condemned it, but Israel sent a message. If you even look like you're building a nuke, we're coming for you. The same decade, Iraq goes to war with Iran. The Iran-Iraq War lasts from 1980 to about 1988. It was brutal chemical weapons trench warfare, over 1 million casualties. On paper, the U.S. backed Iraq. Saddam gets satellite intel, weapons, and economic aid from the West. But Israel, they quietly back Iran. Why? Because Saddam is the bigger threat to them. Iraq has a larger military, it's closer geographically, and just tries to build a bomb. So Israeli intelligence shares info with Iran. Israel even helps facilitate arms deals, part of what later becomes the Iran-Contra scandal. It's all covert, but it's all real. And again, you could look all this up. Then in 1990, Saddam invades Kuwait. He's broke from the Iran war and wants Kuwait's oil. The invasion sets off alarms across the region. He threatens Saudi Arabia's fire Scud missiles into Israel, even though Israel isn't involved. The United States launches Operation Desert Storm, Bush Sr. builds a massive international coalition, invades Iraq, wipes out their military, but deliberately doesn't topple Saddam. He wants regional balance. Iraq is contained, not dismantled. Israel isn't thrilled. From their perspective, Saddam survives, and the job's only half done. 1994, big diplomatic move. Jordan signs a peace treaty with Israel. That's the second Arab country after Egypt. It's brokered by the US, and the reward system is clear. You make peace with Israel, you will get United States money. Israel is now the number one recipient of US foreign aid. Egypt is number 2. Jordan becomes number 3. That's how Washington starts managing the Middle East. Cash in exchange for treaties, strategic favors, and silence. But peace isn't the only strategy in play. In 1996, a group of American neoconservatives write a policy paper for Benjamin Netanyahu's incoming government. It's called A Clean Break, a new strategy for securing the realm. The paper calls for abandoning the land for peace approach. It says stop negotiating with Arab regimes and instead push for regime change, specifically in Iraq, Syria, and Iran. It argues that toppling hostile governments and reshaping the region would strengthen Israel's strategic position. The authors, Richard Pearl, Douglas Feith, David Wurmser, these aren't nobodies. They later are known to join the Bush administration after 9/11. And once 9/11 happens, a clean break becomes more than just a memo. It becomes U.S. foreign policy. The same neoconservatives now have positions of power in the Pentagon and the White House. They push the claim that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. They link Saddam to terrorism. They build the case for war. And in 2003, the United States invades Iraq. Topples Saddam, spends nearly $1 trillion taxpayer dollars trying to rebuild the country, and no weapons of mass destruction were found anywhere. But for Israel, Iraq was only the beginning. They wanted more. They wanted Syria weakened. They wanted Iran isolated or bombed. In their view, the threat wasn't just one rogue dictator. It was the entire resistance axis: Iraq, Syria, Iran, and their proxies like Hezbollah. So after Iraq falls, the pressure shifts. Israel and its advocates in the US start hammering Syria and Iran in the media, in think tanks, in Congress. The goal is clear. The war on terror shouldn't stop with Baghdad. They want the whole board cleared. And that's how the 1981 airstrike on a reactor leads step by step to the US launching a full-scale war in 2003, backed by intelligence games, lobby pressure, and strategic plans that were written years in advance. None of this was random. None of it was reactionary. It was doctrine set in motion long before the towers fell. In 2003, after watching what the US just did to Iraq, Libya gets the message. Gaddafi decides to play ball. He announces he's giving up his nuclear program. Voluntarily, he opens the doors, lets the inspectors in, turns over documents, and ships out centrifuges. He thinks he's buying security, insurance against invasion. He wants to normalize relations, get sanctions lifted, and avoid ending up dead like Saddam. It works for a while, but by 2011, it doesn't mean shit. The Arab Springs hit Libya, protests break out, and NATO uses that as justification to intervene. The United States and its allies bomb Gaddafi's forces, rebels on the ground get support, eventually they capture him. No trial, he's dragged into the streets, and he's executed on video. His decision to disarm ends up being his death sentence. That becomes a lesson for every other regime in the region. Never give up your nukes, never trust the West. Meanwhile, in Syria, the Arab Spring hits there too. Protests escalate quickly. Assad responds with force and things spiral. By 2012, it's a full-blown civil war. They take entire cities and start beheading people on camera. Syria gets ripped apart. Assad holds on, barely, because Iran steps in. Hezbollah sends fighters. Iran sends cash, weapons, and military advisors. And later, Russia joins in too. But without Iran, Assad would have been gone. So Iran cements itself as the key power broker in Syria. At this point, look around the map. Every one of Israel's major enemies is either destroyed, disarmed, or broken. Egypt is neutralized, they've signed peace deals, and they've taken billions in United States aid. Jordan, the exact same. Ally of both the United States and Israel. Iraq, shattered. U.S. invasion left it divided, weak, full of Iranian-backed militias. Libya, it's gone, it's a collapsed state. Syria, it's still bleeding, barely holding together, and is run by ISIS. Lebanon, totally unstable, governed by a weak coalition. Hezbollah runs the south, but the state is bankrupt and fragile. Iran is the only real threat left, the last one standing with resources, structure, and reach. And they've adapted. They know they can't go toe-to-toe with the United States or Israel directly, so they build a proxy network, strategic, long-term, and global. Hezbollah in Lebanon, tens of thousands of missiles pointed at Israel. PMF militias in Iraq control territory, attack U.S. bases, and they dominate politics. The Houthis in Yemen fight Saudi Arabia, fire missiles, and give Iran leverage over the Red Sea. Militias and IRGC operatives in Syria protect Assad, threaten Israel's northern border. It's all designed around one thing: deterrence. Iran knows Israel has the capability to bomb nuclear sites like they did to Iraq in '81 and Syria in 2007. They know the United States has a ton of history in regime change, so Iran starts developing what's basically a second strike doctrine. If you hit Tehran, Hezbollah hits Tel Aviv. If you bomb their nuclear sites, Iraqi militias hit United States troops. If you threaten the regime, the whole region goes up. That's why Iran keeps enriching uranium. That's why they keep building long-range missiles. That's why their proxy network matters. Because without nukes, the only thing keeping them safe is their ability to respond through other means, fast, hard, and across multiple fronts. It's not just about religion or ideology. They watched Saddam get toppled. They watched Gaddafi disarmed and executed. They watched Assad barely survive by the skin of his teeth. They're not playing defense, they're building insurance, because in this region, the second you can't retaliate, you're next. Then comes October 7th, 2023. Hamas launched a massive surprise attack on Israel. It's coordinated and it was brutal and terrible. Militants breached the Gaza border, stormed towns, killing civilians, take hostages, raping and killing women, hundreds dead in a matter of hours. It's the deadliest single-day attack on Israel since its founding. And the entire country immediately goes to war. Israel responds with overwhelming force, not targeted strikes, but full-scale war. Gaza gets bombed into rubble. Residential blocks, tunnels, command centers, and mosques, hospitals, nothing was off limits. The goal was clear: eliminate Hamas completely. They started a ground invasion, blocked off all exits, cut off fuel, food, water, and they are trying to completely eliminate Hamas. It doesn't just stop with Gaza. As soon as Israel moved in, Hezbollah starts firing rockets from Lebanon. Dozens a day, then hundreds. The north is suddenly a second front. At the same time, Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria begin launching rockets at Israeli and U.S. targets. The Houthis in Yemen start hitting Israeli-linked ships in the Red Sea. For the first time, the entire Iranian proxy network activates all at once. Israel starts striking back across the map. Airstrikes hit Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon. Israeli jets bomb Iranian bases and militia convoys in Syria. Gaza remains under constant fire. The war expands into a regional conflict almost overnight. By May 2024, Gaza is just a wasteland. Hamas is essentially destroyed, its leadership killed or scattered, its military capabilities shattered. Israel declares the mission a success. But the humanitarian cost is catastrophic. International backlash grows, but it does not slow Israel down at all. Then in October 2024, Israel turned their full attention to the north. They launch a new offensive against Hezbollah. It starts with heavy airstrikes, but this time they follow with a ground invasion, something they haven't done since 2006. Southern Lebanon turns into a battlefield. Hezbollah fights back hard, but the Israeli campaign is methodical and relentless. In December, the game completely changes. Syria's civil war, which had stabilized in Assad's favor for years, suddenly breaks open again. Rebel factions, quietly backed by Israel, Turkey, and the United States, launch a coordinated push. Iranian forces and Hezbollah units in Syria are stretched thin, already under fire. By the end of the month, Assad's regime collapses. He flees or is killed, unclear. Iranian forces are driven out of Syria entirely. It was a massive blow to Iran. Syria was their forward base for years. It gave them a supply line to Hezbollah. It let them pressure Israel from the north. Losing Syria meant altogether losing their entire corridor. It means losing their ability to wage proxy wars. Israel now has freedom of movement from the Golan to the Mediterranean. So by the end of 2024, the map is looking, again, a lot different. Hamas is gone. Hezbollah is crippled. Syria is under new leadership. Iranian influence in the Levant is collapsing. Israel, after decades of playing defense and containment, is now openly reshaping the region through direct force. And for the first time in decades, Iran is isolated and exposed. No more buffer zones, no more proxy cover, just pressure closing in from all sides. And in 2025, President Donald Trump gets reelected. Airstrikes immediately begin on the Houthis in Yemen, who have been attacking Red Sea shipping lanes and targeting Israel with long-range drones and missiles. The message is clear: no tolerance for Iran's regional assets. We pretty much started hammering all their remaining proxies. In April, Trump draws a red line, publicly tells Iran, you have 60 days to give up your uranium enrichment program completely. That means stopping the centrifuges, shipping out the stockpiles, shutting down the facilities, and Iran refuses. They've seen this movie before. They know giving up nukes means ending up like Gaddafi, so they end up calling the bluff. But it's not really a bluff. Israel moves first. They launch airstrikes deep inside Iran, Fordo, not symbolic hits, but serious damage. The goal is to break the nuclear program outright, not delay it. Iran activates air defense, issues threats, but before they can respond, the U.S. joins in air forces, bombers, stealth drones, cruise missiles. U.S. strikes target IRGC bases, command centers, radar systems. Suddenly, Iran is now in a real war with both Israel and the United States at the same time. And that brings us to pretty much right now. This isn't about containment anymore. It's not about negotiations. It's about finishing the job. Regime change in Iran. That's the end game. That final objective, because once Iran falls, every obstacle to Israeli regional dominance is gone. Lebanon, Hezbollah only exists because of Iranian money, weapons, and logistics. Take Iran out, Hezbollah collapses, Lebanon falls in lines or fragments, Yemen, the Houthis are nothing without Iranian drones and funding. Once Tehran is gone, they're finished. Syria is already broken, Assad's gone. The new regime was installed with US and Israeli backing. Iraq, it's still technically a country, but functionally split between US-aligned Kurds in the north and Iran-backed Shia militias in the south. Militias that are now getting bombed out of existence. Jordan and Egypt locked in long-standing peace treaties with Israel, dependent on U.S. aid, so there's no threat there either. The Gulf states already signed the Abraham Accords. Even Qatar are cooperating with Israel behind the scenes. They care about stability, money, and keeping Iran out. And Saudi Arabia, that's the final prize. Israel's been warming them up for years. Intelligence sharing, secret meetings, quiet cooperation with Iran removed. The Saudis have no more excuses. They join the alliance or get isolated. So what does the map look like post-Iran? From Morocco to Oman, from Sudan to Iraq, the entire region is governed by regimes either openly allied with Israel or the United States, or they're quietly subordinate. No more wars, no more resistance, just trade deals, weapons, contract, and United States security guarantees. And here's one more kicker. Once Iran is neutralized, the US does not need to stay. Washington's already shifting its focus to Asia. China's the next priority. The plan is to hand off regional control to two pillars, Israel and Saudi Arabia. But make no mistake, Israel will be the dominant one. Saudi Arabia has oil, but it's fragile. Tribal divisions, economic dependency, internal unrest. Israel has the tech, the military, and the intelligence capabilities, and now with the United States backing, total regional control and reach. They control the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, the Eastern Mediterranean. Every major trade route between Asia, Africa, and Europe runs through Israeli-aligned corridors. That's where we are now. And no, this isn't happening because Iran is irrational or suicidal. It's not because they hate freedom or can't be reasoned with. It's because one by one, Israel and the United States have knocked over every other regime in the region. Iran is the last domino, the last serious power with independent policy, real military capabilities, and the will to resist. And when that domino falls, the new Middle East will begin with Israel sitting on top and the United States as its enforcer. And let me be clear, none of this is my opinion. This isn't theory, it's not conjecture, and it's not just some fringe rant. Every piece of this, from the UN votes to the secret deals, the weapon shipments, the airstrikes, the pressure campaigns, the nuclear programs, the proxy wars, it's all documented. It's happened, you can trace it all, you can look at speeches, declassified memos, public records, and even congressional testimony. This is all the raw truth. I'm not saying this because I hate anyone, I don't like any country or any group. I'm saying it because I'm tired of watching our country get dragged into endless foreign entanglements, lied to by our own government, manipulated by our own people who don't serve our interests. We have foreign lobbyists infiltrating the United States government and bringing us into wars all around the world. I don't care if it's Israel, Saudi Arabia, Ukraine, China, or Russia. None of them should have a single inch of leverage in Washington. I want America out of these games. I want the blood, the money, the power back in our hands. That's it. America first, not just as a slogan, but as our survival strategy now. We need to do what we can to put America first. That was a pretty long monologue and a pretty good dive into the history of the Middle East and the United States involvement. I want to get into what I think will happen in the weeks to come and what's currently happening right now. We all know that Trump decided to bomb Iran over the weekend, 6 bunker buster bombs. They were able to, like I said, damage the facility, not destroy it, and they only damaged the main facility. There are still other nuclear facilities around Iran. Iran sent their first counterstrike today to the United States. All 6 missiles missed. Like I said, we have superior military, so our military defense is going to be able to deter their missiles. Iran most likely has sleeper cells in our country, so I think people in big cities should be on lookout for the next couple weeks, in stadiums, things like that. I pray to God that nothing like that is to happen, but you never know in times of war what could happen. I hope everyone is able to stay safe. I hope everyone is able to see the truth of what is happening, whether you're a conservative, Republican, liberal, or Democrat. Nobody should be supporting this war. This war is supported by neoconservatives in our government, corrupt people in our government, people who want to make themselves rich in our government and support foreign entities in our government. We need to be supporting America first, putting America first in any way. It's what Donald Trump ran on in 2016 and somehow is abandoned now in 2024. I'm not fully going against Donald Trump. I don't want anyone to take this episode as, oh, he hates Trump now. No, I think Trump will still be a net positive to the country in many ways, getting rid of the woke policies, removing the illegal immigrations that invaded our nation. But at the same time, Trump ran on no new wars, and Israel just cashed in their favor with him for that $100 million they donated to him during the campaign. I'm James Pascalides. This is America Unfiltered. I'm signing off today. I hope you guys have a blessed day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you.